Big thank you to Mighty Boards for helping us make today's video. If you're looking for paint colors for west-facing rooms, you've come to the right video. We talked about what paint colors do and how they behave in western exposed rooms, but a lot of you also wanted me to go over some examples of which colors I would use in such a situation. Well, fear not, because I got 5 of them for you today. Right before we dive into the colors themselves, just a really quick breakdown of west-facing rooms and how they behave with paint colors. So, if you think about it, our old buddy, the sun up there, rises in the east, sets in the west. So if you think about it, you're not gonna get any real direct light in the morning because the sun is over there. But you'll get a lot of it as the sun starts to set in the afternoon into the evening. This means your colors will appear warmer throughout the day. So they start off really cool and shaded and then progressively get warmer and warmer and warmer. So it's just up to you to pick a color that works the way you want, when you want. And also, please take these colors with a little grain of salt. These are just some of the examples of possible candidates that I would opt for, and by no means are they the be-all and end-all choices. But here we go. Let me get comfortable. Much better. So, for the first color, I picked it based on the assumption that you want to use the room primarily in the morning. This is huge because if you're spending most of your time in the morning, pick a color in the morning. This is the time of day where you'll get the least amount of sun, so your room will be a bit dimmer and cooler with shaded lighting. Big distinction between shaded lighting and shadows. Shaded lighting refers to the overall light rather than individual shadows cutting up your walls visually. In the morning time, the color that I instinctually picked was White Dove OC17. One of my top choices for white kitchen cabinets. What I love about it is it just feels so effortless. It's light, it's just a classic color. Now I have a bit of a confession to make here. I did sort of break my own personal rule of trying to keep your morning west-facing colors around 80 LRV because this one's actually around 85. So it's a lot lighter than I would recommend for a lot of people, but I'm willing to make an exception here in this video because White Dove has enough of an undertone where it doesn't feel like a pure white, and I think that's very, very important. It also has a touch of warmth, which helps neutralize the cool, natural lighting that you'll be getting earlier on in the day. But if you're the type of person that spends more time in the room around lunch, around 12 o'clock or even 1, then a color like White Dove would probably be way too light and would get washed out as soon as noon hits and the sun is at its highest point in the sky. This is going to make your room feel really, really bright. Any subtle undertones are going to vanish. So White Dove, although is pretty warm for an off-white, it's still pretty subtle, all things considered. So around lunch, this is a time where you definitely want a color that is closer to a color, like an actual visible color. But you also want to lean warm, I'd say, because your natural lighting will still be pretty neutral and flat. It's going to be bright, but it's going to be more white rather than blue or yellow. So my second color for, midday usage, it's called Sandy White. It's actually closer to a sandy beige though. It's not really white in the slightest, but this is nice because it does a couple things. It has enough warmth that pushes through that cooler morning natural lighting, but it also has an LRV around 73, which means it's never gonna feel like a plain old white on the walls. Your guests aren't gonna say, hey, when are you gonna paint those primered walls? First of all, if you have guests like that, kick them out. That's kind of cheeky. But Sandy White has enough color where you won't really think it's just white. It actually seems like a real color, which is a good thing. It's also going to feel fairly neutral overall, which means you don't need to worry too much about it clashing with other colors in your color scheme. It may not be a groundbreaking choice, but it's one of my first recommendations for midday west-facing room colors for those reasons. Now, by far, one of the easiest ways to assess how a color looks at a certain time of the day is to test it out precisely at the same time you'd likely be using that room. Mighty Boards is a company that sells really handy paintable boards that are way larger than color chips. They're even larger than other similar products on the market. Bigger is better when testing out colors, and the materials that Mighty Boards are made out of are absolutely perfect for testing because they're flexible, yet they don't warp or bend when you're using them. This means they can sit flush against the surface you're trying to paint, and the color is then going to look as accurate as possible. Most importantly, you'll be able to observe how the color looks in your Western exposed room. Don't forget to check out their website down below in the description to find out more information on them. For color number 3, we start to get a whole lot warmer in our lighting. Conveniently, the sun's starting to come through right now for me. So this means if you pick a color like sandy white for the afternoon when the sun really starts to visually heat up, it means your colors are going to start to heat up too. So if you know for a fact that your west facing room you're picking a paint color for is mainly going to be used in the afternoon, then I always like to introduce a transitional color like Refined, which is a soft, muted, warm sage green that does a pretty good job at feeling passive in the morning, but delightfully comforting in the afternoon. Just by introducing that little bit of green, the much warmer natural light that will be coming in will bring that color out even more and will hopefully do a flawless job at relaxing you after a hard day of work, when all you want to do is just sit on a couch, not stand in front of a camera. The last 2 colors I'll leave you with are going to be my picks for those all-rounder colors in west-facing rooms. These are the choices for people that don't necessarily have a specific time of day that they use the room and maybe want something that is pretty workable no matter when you decide to use it. This doesn't mean it won't change as the day goes on. It's not a magic color, but I do find these sorts of colors look pretty nice in Western exposures generally. Number 4 on this list is Morning Dew, which just has an LRV around 71, and it's actually a little bit similar to the last color we talked about, although this one is even more streamlined and I'll say a tad gray leaning. This means it will feel a bit cooler in the morning, but in sort of an aesthetic, contemporary sort of way. This is largely because it still has those warm undertones in the background. What it does really nicely is help settle the warm light coming in the afternoon a little bit better. So if you're a little bit worried about yellows and greens coming through, Morning Dew will feel more settled overall. But for my final color, I wanted to leave you with something quite a bit different from the rest, but I personally am a huge fan of it. This is a color choice for the people that don't mind a soothing, cool color cast earlier in the day because you will ultimately get rewarded by a beautifully rich turquoise later on in the day. Serene Breeze is a dusty, light teal that feels elegant in the day and stunning when the sun starts to make its way to your side of the world, on the west side. You really can't go wrong with these warm undertone blue colors in your Western exposures. I just know that this color isn't necessarily for everyone, but if you've got the guts, I would encourage you to take the plunge on a color like Serene Breeze. It's truly remarkable, stunning, beautiful. I'm a huge fan. So we have one more facing room video to talk about, and that's south facing rooms, which we will be getting to in a few weeks. Check out some east facing room colors over here if you're looking for pretty much the exact opposite of what we talked about today. East and west, pretty much yin and yang. See you in the next one.